Hey Bookworms, welcome back to the channel and welcome if you're new. It's Sam and today we're going to be talking about all the books I read in May. So we're only going to be doing my wrap up in this video because my TBR is going to be a secret as I'm filming a challenge video that will go up around the first week of July and I'll let you go now. Jesus Christ, words. I will let you know more about that in that video. Anyhow, I ended up reading 8 books this month. I had 3 DNFs, which by the way, 2 of them I'm so disappointed in. And I had 1 3-star, 5 4-stars, and gosh, I can't read. 2 5-stars. So to be fair, my reading this month wasn't that bad. And I'm finally reading back up to 8 books a month because my pain hasn't been so bad lately, which yay. I mean, I say that, but I've now got a twisted ankle. Yeah, that's not fun. But yeah, let's talk about the DNF'd books. The first one that I DNF'd was A Brush with Love. I'm not a massive fan of the whole insta-love, and I didn't know going into this that that's what this was. At the same time, I was semi-enjoying it, and then I got about halfway and it was just really doing my head in. I just found it so unbelievable that these characters would be like, did I say unbelievable? I guess that's right, right? Unbelievable, unrealistic, that these 2 characters would literally be in love straight away. It was just, honestly, so irritating. Now saying that, I actually liked the book One Day in December, which is like an insta-love book, but it was spaced over like 10 years and I felt like that made it so much more realistic. I think it's depending on how it's done, but with this one, I wasn't really interested. It annoyed me and the whole dentist talk was just boring. I wasn't interested in it. So yeah, I ended up DNFing that one, which honestly I was not expecting. Next one I DNF'd was a second book in a series, and that is the First Thing Murder Club sequel, The Man Who Died Twice. I really enjoyed the first book. I believe I gave it 4 stars. We follow these characters pushing on in their 80s and they live in like a retirement village and they solve these like cold cases in their little group, and then one day an actual murder happens. Now the sequel of the book pretty much follows off from the first book, and once again they're solving another murderer, helping someone, but it just felt a bit dull. Like it just felt very repetitive to what happened and I didn't feel very different, and I was kind of bored and not really finding myself wanting to pick up the book. So I ended up giving myself like a day break from reading, but then I still didn't want to. The one thing I'll say about this book that I love, and I think what makes this book unique, is the characters. The characters are 5 stars, but the story itself, I was just really bored, and I'm not going to be continuing that series. And the third book that I DNF'd was a book series that I honestly could not wait to pick up and read, and this is by the author who wrote the American Royals series, and I love that series. So I thought that I'd love the series The 1000th Floor. I picked it up and I started reading it, but it feels like a carbon copy of her Gossip Girl series. It just feels like it's Gossip Girl but in the future, and you can kind of tell that these characters seem to be these other characters from Gossip, like, you know, the Blair characters like Avery, and then you've got all these other characters, and it even kind of starts in a similar way as well. And it was just like, if she didn't try to make it so similar to Gossip Girl, I think it could have worked, but it was just like she was literally copying her Gossip Girl series and trying to add a sci-fi aspect to it, which isn't completely bad, but it was just the similarities were just too much and I was really bored, so I just gave up. That's the 3 books I ended up DNFing. Let's get on to the books that I actually did read this month. Starting with the Happily Ever After playlist. This is the second book in a series. The other book is The Friend Zone. You can read them in whatever order you want. Our character in this one was the side character and the best friend in the first book, and in this one we follow Sloane, whose fiance died after a motorbike accident, and she's still dealing with the grief and learning to cope with it all when one day a dog jumps through her, what's it called? The roof of her car. She believes that this dog is like a message from her dead fiance, but then she ends up being in contact with the owner of the dog. What's the dog's name? Tucker. So then Tucker's owner gets in touch with her and he obviously wants his dog back, and that's how the relationship kind of works. It's like they're texting, the dog sort of brings them together, and it's this cute little romance that I absolutely adored. I loved Sloane and Jason. I thought they were amazing, and honestly this book was just everything. It's super cute. If you haven't read it yet, highly recommend it if you love romances, because I love this one. I gave it 4 stars. I can't wait to read the next one. Again, this is not in order, by the way. I'm just doing it in star order. Does that make sense? The next book I've got here is Dial A for Auntie. I wasn't going to get this book, but then I saw Lexi from Lexi Reads talking about this book and saying how much she loved it, so I ended up ordering it and reading it. We follow a character who goes on this blind date that's set up by her aunties and her mother, who kind of like very intrusive, like very much she does what they say because they're the boss, you know. She's been brought up to respect her elders, so she goes onto this date and then she accidentally kills him, and her aunties have to help her get rid of the body. But then they're doing like this big wedding event because they all have this big wedding like company together, and she's the photographer. They decide that they're going to hide this body, but the old hotel owner is her ex-boyfriend from years ago who she still has feelings for. So it's like a second chance romance, thriller, comedy sort of thing, because this book is definitely really, really funny. So if you're looking for something that's like cozy and light-hearted with romance, I would definitely say pick this one up. I had such a great time reading it. I laughed so much. There's so many ridiculously funny moments in this book. Oh my god, the aunties in this book are everything. They are just so funny. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed this one. I can't wait to read the sequel. I believe that one's already out, but I think it's hardback in the UK, so I'm trying to wait for the paperback one to then match. But yeah, this is just done really well, and it's really nice to just read something that made me laugh. Then we have One Night on Island. We then have One Night on the Island by Josie Silver. It was kind of a second chance for me with this author because I loved One Day in December. I DNF'd her of a book which was The Two Lives of Lady Bird, not Bird. God. And yeah, this one, we follow these two characters who end up going to this island, and they've both booked out this cabin, but it's been double booked, so they have no choice but to share this small little cabin, and then decide who's going to leave on the boat the next day or the day after, whenever the boat's coming next. But of course, things are not that simple, and this book was super, super cute. I loved the whole island setting and how the small community all comes together. I loved how these characters absolutely disliked each other and slowly grew into like a friendship. It was just done really well, and honestly, I love this book. I didn't give it 5 stars. I think I just felt like the last couple pages dragged slightly, but it's such a beautiful little read. And if you're looking for something that feels cozy, I definitely recommend this one. Then we have Breathless. This is a book that like I kept seeing, but I never picked it up because I didn't take much notice of it. And then I read this. There's a killer on the mountain and you might be next. And then I was like, oh, okay, I need to read this one. And I was going to read it like in June, but I couldn't wait. So I was like, no, I need to read it now. We follow a character who is a journalist, and she goes on this expedition to climb this mountain and get to the summit for this guy to give her an interview. But as they're up on the mountain, all this weird stuff starts happening. Some stuff gets stolen, a body gets found, there's a weird note left on her tent, and it's honestly such an isolated, creepy setting, knowing that there's someone on the mountain that is killing people, and you know, she's not exactly an experienced climber, so it's the perfect place to kill people because you're up on this mountain and you could just claim that as an accident. The reveal wasn't super shocking to me. I kind of guessed it, but it was still a brilliant ending, and I really, really enjoyed this book. Next one I read is Welcome to Your Life. So this is somewhat, I believe, to be a romance, but then it's much more than that. It's about a character who is learning to be comfortable with herself, learning to love who she is and be confident, because she isn't very confident with herself and her body. She's a bigger girl and she doesn't think guys would be interested in her. This book starts out where it's her wedding day and she ends up walking out on her wedding, and then she chooses to move to London and live with an old friend and then start dating again. She goes on a bunch of different dates and she meets a bunch of men that are honestly just insane. I think for me, what I loved about this book the most is just the fact about learning to love yourself with the body you've got, and it takes this character a while to be confident in who she is and not keep like, I guess, going for guys that she feels like, oh, I'm fat so I'll just go for this guy, not guys that she's actually attracted to. I think it is beautifully written, and yeah, I don't really know what else to say about it other than builds up your confidence if you are a bigger girl, that, you know, there are men out there who will like you. Whatever your size, there are always going to be a guy out there for you, and this book definitely made me feel a bit more positive. I'm obviously a bigger girl. I don't like my weight and I'm losing it, but there are girls out there who like the size they are but still don't feel very confident. And I definitely would say pick this book up if you want to read something that's got comedy, romance, friendship and positive message. Then this is definitely a book for you. Now let's move on. So my 3-star read this month was Reckless Girls. I did enjoy this book, but I just felt like I wasn't really going to remember it too much after I read it, and it just felt a little bit I don't know, I think the ending was a little bit over the top. The flashbacks I wasn't really interested in, and I kind of just, I don't know, like none of the characters in this book were very likeable, even our main character who was such a hypocrite. I just didn't really like any of the characters. I felt like they were all such awful people. In this book we follow this character who she's moved out to, I think, Hawaii with her boyfriend, and they're supposed to be sailing their yacht around to go to all these different islands, but his yacht isn't working, so now she's working in this hotel and she ends up getting fired. And then one day her boyfriend meets these two girls who offer him, I think, like 50 grand if he can take them to this like island that nobody really goes to. There's like a lot of mystery stuff about this island, like cannibalism, death, plane apparently crashed landed on this island, and they end up going to this island, and things at first are really good, and then things start to go downhill. It took a long time for anything to really happen, like as in for things to start going downhill. I feel like it was like the last 100 pages, and I just felt like it was just slow. Like if I was comparing this book to the book The Castaways, that book's also set on this island, like a plane crashes on it, and I gave that book 5 stars because it was just, it got straight into it, but it was just like kept your attention and things were happening, where in this book it felt like not much was really happening until the very end. So it was kind of disappointing because this cover's beautiful, and I loved her other book, The Wife Upstairs. But yeah, this one I did enjoy, gave it 3 stars, which is still a really, really good rating, but it wasn't what I was hoping it to be. I was hoping it to be at least a 4 star, but yeah, unfortunately it was a 3 star, but like I said, I still enjoyed it. Now let's get on to my 2 5 stars of the month. And I'm so glad I had 2 5 stars. The first one is The Tattooist of Auschwitz. Am I saying that? Auschwitz. So we follow this character who is taken to the camps, and he's made to work doing the tattooist of the prisoners. He ends up meeting this girl there and falling in love with her, and this is actually based on a true story, but this is not non-fiction because not every detail in this book is accurate. It is fiction still. Honestly, this is just, it was one of those reads that's very difficult, and I found it very difficult to rate because obviously it is set in the concentration camps and the character itself is actually real, like I said, and it's just a really difficult read to see what these people go through and how this character survives. But I love him so much. What's his name? Lal? I can't pronounce it. His name's Lal, I think that's how you say it. And he is such a selfless person with all the stuff that he does. Like, despite the fact that, you know, he's in this concentration camp having to fight for his own life, he helps other people and puts himself at risk every single day for these people and for this girl. And I just think that this book gives you so much hope, like, and that's what I feel like this book has, that this character, he had so much hope of his survival, that's what kind of saved him, because he fought for it every single day. And to find love in one of the most darkest places ever, it's just honestly such a beautiful story. And yeah, this book didn't really hit me until literally, I think it was an hour after I read it, and I said to my partner, oh my god, this song reminds me so much of this book and this situation and what these characters are going through. And I just started crying. Like, I mean, I just started crying, and it hit me really hard about after. And I remember then thinking, like, I have to give this book 5 stars because, one, these characters are real, and in this book you actually get like pictures. And I don't know, I end up reading the back bit. I don't normally read like the acknowledgement stuff like that, but she has like at the back where she talks about where she went to get all the information about him, going back to his hometown, going to the concentration camps, and it was just really, really touching. And another thing that's amazing is that the character, well, he's not a character, he's a real person, but obviously in the book he's a character because something's fictional. He's actually from Slovakia, which is where my partner's from, and my partner never heard this story before, and I was telling him about it, and it's just amazing to know that such a selfless person, he's a hero, everything he went through. And yeah, I don't want to ruin this. If you haven't read it, highly recommend it. I want to read the next 2 books in this series. This one definitely will stay with me for a very long time. I'm planning to write a book myself, and I just know that one day when I do decide to write my historic fiction that I have planned, I know that I'm going to have to go to the concentration camp, because I think you have to go there to fully understand it. But it's just somewhere that's not exactly going to be nice to visit. Heartbreaking, but yeah, this was a 5-star read, and I highly recommend this book. And next up, the final book that I read this month, that was also 5 stars. It was final book in a series, so I completed the series, and that was God and Monsters. This is my favourite series ever. Oh, I love the Serpent and Dust series, and every single book has been 5 stars, but this one, wow. I was so nervous to read this book. I kept putting it off, one because it's 600 pages, but because I was also so scared that it was just not going to live up to the rest of the books. And I was so wrong. So much happens in this book. There's so many twists, so many moments. This book made me cry twice. In the second book, a character dies. I don't want to say who because I don't want to ruin it. That character's definitely not forgotten in this book. That character's mentioned a lot, and this book, there's a moment in this book that just talks about hope and the afterlife and what it's like. And it's a very, very touching moment. But what really got me was the epilogue. Epilogues kind of ruin books sometimes for me. I just feel like they're not necessary, but the epilogue in this, I'm not going to say anything, don't want to ruin it just in case you haven't read this yet, but the epilogue was absolutely beautifully written, and I will never, forget it. I am incredibly sad that I have finished this series and will never read from these characters again. But at the same time, I'm so glad that I have finished this series and I now know the complete story and everything that happens. She is bringing out a new series and it's set in the same world, so I'm really excited about that. But yeah, this is so good. And if you haven't read this series yet, go and read it because it's so good. I literally kept putting off the entire series because people were saying that it wasn't great. But this is one of my favourite series ever. So yeah, I'm going to be doing a separate video where I talk about it and say if it's worth the read. It obviously is. But I give some details and thoughts about each book. I'm not sure if I'm going to put spoilers in. Let me know below. But yeah, this was my other 5-star read of the month and I love this book. Oh my god, it's just everything. I love the character Lou, I love the character Reed, Coco, Amazon, all of them. They are just perfect. And I'm going to reread this series at some point because I love it so much. That is all the books I read in May. Let me know if you read any of these or plan to. But yeah, that's it. So, until my next video, bye!